of our agenda. It's on page 42 of our agenda.
Yes, you have this letter that we have prepared. It has been seen by all members of the Blue Water Park Committee. They concur. It has been seen by my colleagues from Bowen Bay as well. Simply put, we had a number of problems relating to the way the collective budgets have been prepared, not the least of which is that we first got to see these a week ago. And it's quite clear from the slides that you've seen that the amalgamation of three systems, because really one system is under the trusteeship of the municipality staff themselves, Blue Water Park, King Edward Bay and Blue Water Park amalgamated, and that seemed to work reasonably well. Bowen Bay, justifiably, I think, should be part of the system, and there are various considerations as to how that should be made to happen. And we agreed, as was pointed out back in February, that we were looking towards a solution which would have a flat rate across the system for this to be equitable. However, we were expecting to see numbers. We expected to see something that we would understand. We did some forecasts of our own, which the financial services people have told us do not meet their workings. So I'm faced with the interesting question of trying to explain to the people who live in Blue Water Park why our rates are going to rise. And this is the operating cost now. And we have to be absolutely precise about this. The operating part of the cost per household last year was $380 plus $100 for the capital charge. There is no question about the capital charges. These are clearly a necessity. They need to be put aside for large capital projects. And I want to come back to that in a couple of minutes. But we are looking at an increase, as we understood it after the meeting, from $380 to $437 per connection, which was about, I calculated, 15%. And an increase in the capital charge from $100 to $257. Now that we did not get, because the original concept behind all of these amalgamations was that each system brings into the collective system its patrimony, which might be on the positive side of the ledger, or it could be on the negative side of the ledger. But in any case, part of the question was just exactly what is in the capital budget, and Kirsten alluded to this about pumps, that we got into a discussion a week ago about whether or not pumps are operating costs or capital. We've always treated them as operating costs, and Blue Water Park has got a history of going back to 1980, where we've been running the system ourselves, and that's how we've always treated our pump costs. The documents that were tabled a week ago didn't have comparative figures for 2011, which for any kind of budgetary recommendation is absolutely essential. We had no idea. We were being asked to approve something that we had no idea what the previous expenditures, the actual expenditures for 2011 had been. I went back. I had assumed actually we were going to get the five-year plan, which I have last year's version of. I dug it out that night and looked at it, because there was a good five-year plan table last year, at the beginning of April of last year. And I was assuming we would just get the same thing, but updated by 1 year. We didn't. But in the five-year plan from last year, it assumed a constant level of charges for each of the systems. And that clearly was different. Finally, there are questions about both accounting policies and, for that matter, technological replacement policies. The question of reserve funds is very important to us, because Blue Water Park brings into the system a very healthy capital reserve. And as it is our understanding, it was our understanding, and this goes back to the time when the municipality took over the water systems, that these reserves were to be inviolable. In other words, they were to be assigned only to the water district which possessed them. And this, as I said before, could be positive, or indeed, if they were deficient, the system would bring in that deficiency as well. but that we saw on the slide show just now, which again is news to me, the implication that these will all be merged and that there would be only one fund. In other words, some systems would be contributing more into the capital reserve funds than others. And the second of all is that we think that there is certainly a bylaw number 74 for Blue Water, which says that it has to be kept segregated. Now, council of course can choose to amend that bylaw, but right as matters stand right now, these bylaws, as we understand them, as we read them, provide for separate accounting of each of these reserve funds. So the other thing too about the meetings, again from Kristen's presentation, she's absolutely correct. There have been 3 joint meetings and 1 separate meeting over the past 4 months. But these were all to do with, if you like, the principles behind the amalgamation. And she iterated those quite accurately. There was a need, and I think we all agreed, that we have to have both a common billing system, hopefully a common rate, but that would need to be seen. Second of all, that there would have to be overconsumption requirements, because in both of our systems, there are 2 or 3 users who use several times what the average is. And while Blue Water Park in the past had simple ways of dealing with it, simply because we basically didn't have enough water during the summer. During the winter time we had lots of water. We're just like Bowen Bay in that respect. But during the summertime we simply did not have enough supply, and therefore we would take action against people who overconsumed. In our case, there was not a case, I don't think we ever had a case of deliberate overconsumption. In most cases, these were cases where non-resident homeowners had either left a tap on or a connection had broken, and they were spewing 7,000 gallons a day until either municipality staff or the meter readers caught up with it. Just as an aside, I don't think you mentioned, but meters are the movement towards these electronic meter reading devices is laudable. But one of the reasons that we read our meters manually is simply to detect system failures. The electronic wand system does not show you the rate at which the water is being consumed. If you get down on your hands and knees and look at a meter and you see the little dial spin, you know that there's something clearly wrong. All that the wand will give you is the exact reading at that time. And in a small system like Blue Water Park, that's a real problem. Arguably, in a place like Bowen Bay, it's not as much of a problem, although I would argue 7,000 gallons a day that's being wasted by any system is probably not reasonable. Given the lack of time for us to digest all of this, and given, in fact, the variable numbers that we've been given, as I say, at the meeting a week ago, we were given a very sparse spreadsheet, some of which columns didn't actually add up, which caused further issues during the discussion. I would certainly ask that, well, let's make the statement that Blue Water Park Local Advisory Committee cannot recommend the budget as proposed for our system. You can do whatever else you like, but we cannot recommend that budget. We would like to have more time to consider it. I realize that you have a timeline to meet, but somehow we have been placed in a position of being asked to recommend something, to discuss something, and then not given time to do it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. For those that don't know, I'm Chair of Bowen Bay Water System, and we requested these joint meetings late last year between Blue Water Park and Bowen Bay Water, and it was to express amalgamation and how we can work through the issues of combining the systems, starting with operations and then getting into capital. The meetings that we have had have been successful, and we are working well together, not without difficulty, but we are working together. But as Adam has said, we haven't taken this to our local communities. The rates bylaw that to repel the other ones that's here right now, we just got 3 days ago. So none of our homeowners have seen it. So although we're heading in the right direction and we think we're doing well, as Adam says, we do need more time. I haven't taken any of this to our community, and I don't know what you're going to do. In this particular case with Bowen Bay, it's actually a reduction in rates, but still our community does not know what's going on. So I thoroughly agree with Adam, and I don't know what council can do here. But if we have to go back to 2011 and keep it that way, to me, that's fine. And let us continue with our joint meetings to work through combined operations and capital expenditures. And let us work through into the rest of this year and come up with a plan for next year. And we do have problems with the way the spreadsheets are and capital expenditures, of some capital being directly against one of the districts and not against all. So there's these issues coming up. And then the last comment I want to make, I know finance doesn't want to hear this again, but this will be the 5th time I've asked for a lawyer to look into, are we allowed in our service area to spend money in another service area? And I don't think we are allowed to do that. And I think you need a legal opinion. Is we have a service area, and the service area says that you will spend money in that service area. And this budget is saying that we're going to spread that money throughout the 3 systems. And I don't know whether you're allowed to do it. And we want to make sure that this time it's done right. And the bylaws for Bowen Bay right now and for Blue Water right now are not being followed for overconsumptions, and they never have been. So you've got bylaws that are no good, and I'm not sure of the legalities, and these need to be expressed. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can we pass the budget without these, without a consolidation? Can we pass them as separate items? That is Cold Bay, Blue Water.
What we had proposed is that we understand that there's more consultation. There's another meeting set up for mid-May. So what we propose is that because the budget was built based on our direction on February 12th to prepare the budget based on a combined basis, that we, as a compromise, propose to pass the budget this way, continue the consultation, and if it results in a change, then we bring back an amended budget bylaw. But this would be a compromise to move forward, to allow us to move forward at this point.
And what do you say?
No, I would have to say that this is a case where we have asked for this type of financial assistance and consultation. I have an email I sent to you, to somebody, back in November, saying, look, we have to start thinking about the 2012 rates. What are the implications of all of this? And at that time, we had not come to our working arrangements as relation to the amalgamation of the 3 systems. This was actually just a simple request from the chair of the committee saying, what's 2012 look like? Now, that could have included some of the capital issues, some of the question of pumps and so on and so forth at the time. But this has all been sort of sliding and sliding and sliding, and now we have, now we're here. I would also like to make another point, which Bill is well aware of, and that is that there is a bylaw also out there which requires that the CAO call a meeting. Well, not requires the CAO to call a meeting. 3 chairs could call a meeting as well. Well, there's 2 chairs sitting right here, and if the King Edward Bay chair, which is the mayor, chooses to do so, well, I'm not certain about that. Okay, but in any case, there is provision for a committee of LAC chairs to meet. And the reason for that committee to exist, this is a replacement for the old Water Services Management Commission, but the reason for it to exist is to deal precisely with the philosophical issues as to how systems amalgamate. and how new lots are either subdivided lots or new additions to specific districts are brought into the system, because it's recognized that all of these systems do have significant capital assets, and that there has to be some kind of equitable way of accounting for the assets user by user, and how those assets either combine or are redistributed. In the case of Blue Water Park, we had 2 lots that were subdivided. We actually went through a process by which we came up with a very bad estimate, as I think it wasn't bad in the sense that it was out of line. It was simply bad because I did it on the back of an envelope as to what the value of an extra connection to the Blue Water Park system might be. So with island, again, I support the idea of island-wide policies on this. I think it's essential that the island have specific policies to deal with things like amalgamation and addition of users. And indeed, questions as to how capital reserves are managed, how the surpluses are managed, what the surpluses may or may not be used for, and so on.
I think the idea of amalgamation is a laudable idea, but I think what Bill pointed out is a deal breaker on moving forward on this, and that is there are service area bylaws in place. So, we can talk about, the issues with the way capitalization has occurred, but really when you get right down to it, it can't move forward because of the service area bylaws, right?
Well, with all due respect, we share costs among local service areas now. We take money from the local service area, we transfer it into general funds to offset costs. We take money from the Bowen Bay, sorry, not the Bowen Bay, but the Blue Water Park and King Edward Bay, and we share those costs now. So I'm fully supportive of getting a legal opinion on the validity of cost sharing among contiguous, or on the validity of operating separate systems jointly, but my interpretation of legislation is that it's completely valid.
There are 3 separate service area agreements that are in place, and it's legislation, and it dictates the way in which money is spent.
We're budgeting within these 3 systems and allocating costs among 3 separate
I thought you were talking about the
that would require amalgamation.
Yeah.
And can I?
So what we're dealing with today is a financial plan, which has to get at least first reading. What were the proposals to get it? First reading or second reading?
First.
And we've got to consolidate, it's got to be a consolidated, being the general revenue fund, the sewer, and all the water systems. And it's got to be carried out. We don't have to give first reading or pass any of the water system rates bylaws today. What the financial plan says is we've got to recover this amount through user rates. Because it's consolidated, it doesn't specify by system. So it's one big number for all 7 water systems. So if we gave it first reading on the assumption that we will do further work on what the actual rates are going to be, the actual cost to operate aren't going to change, whether they're run as 3 separate systems or as a group, right?
Correct.
It's just a matter of how we're carving up the cow to collect it.
That's right.
So okay. I think we could go ahead with the financial plan as it's presented, but there's clearly more discussion that's got to be had on how we're going to get the money to operate the 3 West Side systems. So is that
okay.
Fair to Adam and Bill that we
yeah.
can?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I come back to the point that we just don't want this to keep on sliding.
No, there won't be. We're not sliding. Believe me. I mean, this catches. I think it catches council a little bit by surprise, but we're not going to let it slide. I promise you.
One of the ways that we have always seen the question of dealing with the separate bylaws for each of the 3 systems was that in the case of King Edward Bay and Blue Water Park, we had just simply said we could buy water from King Edward Bay at so much per cubic meter, and that calculation is relatively easy to do. And that way the 2 accounting systems would remain separate, but the King Edward Bay people would see substantial revenue accruing to, of course, offset the increased operating costs of their system. That's another way of doing it, and that's another reason why we need to have some kind of a generalized, agreed-upon policy as to how this should be done.
And that's
So
all stuff we can
That's
do
what we
after.
can do that.
Yeah.
We can amend the budget too. I mean,
Well,
that's
the
something we
individual
can.
budgets.
No, just hold on a second. So we can do that too at a later date. It's just that it's really important that we get the budget first reading today. So,
But we're not going to meet until after you've passed the budget, because it's after May the 15th.
Right.
Isn't it?
well, no, we may meet before, or you may meet with.
Well, the meeting has been set for May the 16th, understandably, because leading up to the budget, there are much larger fish to fry than 3 water systems.
3 water systems.
Would everybody just, to make this simpler again, look at their on-table agenda, page 56F. There's one line, water systems operation. It doesn't differentiate between any of the systems. It's one big number. So we,
So which line?
The on table.
the on-table, it's
Right.
page 50, it's page 5 of 5, right? Karen, I've got the right schedule
Yeah,
eight,
that's
the
right.
2012
Yeah.
financial plan.
So
There's one line, E10 down here under expenditure, water systems operation. So that's it's done deliberately in one big line. We can change the numbers within that line any way we want. And up above, there's one line that's called water systems parcel taxes. And when we actually decide on the rates and the user fees, those bylaws can come later. We don't have to give those readings today.
But they still have to be adopted by May 15th.
They still have to be, well, the user fees, not until the bills go out. The parcel taxes would have to be done by May 15th.
So can
What-
we,
What I would propose is that we exclude bylaw number 323/2012, which is the 3 Bowen Bay, Blue Water Park, King Edward Bay bylaw, which just says how we're going to collect enough revenue to meet that road, those 2 roads that Council Morris pointed out. And so exclude that, but read all the other bylaws, which allow us to move forward. So the bylaw 323, instead of being 535 for Bowen Bay, Blue Water, and King Edward, may jiggle around and be different rates for each system. It allows us time to do more constant. 535 plus 100.
It's in the purple agenda.
These are all pieces of, thank you. Okay, well, these are all pieces of paper which were not available to us.
It's 7.1B in the purple agenda.
Yeah, got it. This was emailed to you. So the risk is that after the consultation, we decide that the total revenue and the total expense for operating is wildly wrong, and we do have to do an amended bylaw, but at that point, we can cross that bridge if it's totally wrong. But they're a small system compared to all the other water systems, and I'd be surprised if it changes that much.
drastically?
Because we know what we need to do to operate it the way it's being operated, and the proposed overall costs are not going up more. I think it was $4,000 for the 3 systems. So, and that's inflation to pay for telephone going up and hydro going up. Within those 3 systems, it may change around, but that's not going to
I think that's
affect
what the issue is.
this
That's what the
bylaw.
issue
It's not
is.
going to affect the financial.
No.
So if that's a workable solution, I propose we read those bylaws. Should I do the general operating budget, or the general municipal budget discussion now, and then we'll read all of the bylaws at once, or do you want to read the water ones while it's fresh in
We
your
have to
mind?
approve the financial plan before we can do the
I
water.
know. But, okay. Okay. So, given we're backing up on the agenda, should I plan to spend 5 minutes on the general municipal operations? Okay, you've had my report. The only thing late item is the 1 page that Councillor Morris just talked about, which amalgamates up all of the documents you've been seeing in the last 12, I think I said there was 12 meetings leading up to today. So my report begins on page 44 of your yellow regular council agenda.